This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Mark. Mike Baggetta has always loved music. It's been a constant part of his life. His dad was a guitarist who played for years. Some of his earliest memories are of his dad's guitar case and amps stacked up after a wedding gig, smelling like old cigarette smoke. He still finds that smell nostalgic. But Mike found his own path into music, writing original songs from the start. He went to Rutgers to study music and even played the Montreux Jazz Festival during that time, with George Benson holding court in the front row. But at one point, he quit music and decided to pursue other opportunities. That's where he and I find our Yellow Pages connection. But the guitar slowly crept back into his life and wouldn't leave. So he went with it, releasing an album of prepared guitar as his solo debut. Interesting idea. He's really big on improvisation, and that's led to some killer collaborations and albums like his latest release, Everywhen We Go. It's the second release from the trio of Mike Baggetta, Mike Watt, and Jim Keltner. The album title came from guitarist Henry Kaiser, and Mike is anxious to see how many times it gets autocorrected. It's a great album filled with improvisation that is actually listenable. And you'll hear clips during this episode, but the songs have so much movement that you really need to go check them out in their entirety. So I recommend picking up Everywhen We Go wherever you get new music. And follow Mike at Mike Baggetta on Instagram, at MAB Notes on Twitter, and follow us at Performance ANX on both. Reach out there or email us at theperformanceanxietypod@gmail.com. Let us know what you think and maybe who you'd like to hear from next. Now please give a warm welcome to Mike Baggetta on Performance Anxiety, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Okay. Hey, this is Mike Baggetta, and I'm excited to be on the Performance Anxiety Podcast with Mark Shea, talking about my new record, Everywhen We Go, with me, Jim Keltner, and Mike Watt. All right. See? Trust, do it, bang. First take. It's kind of amazing how years of lockdown, quarantine, video, everything, I can still manage to fuck up not having the sound on or something.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that occasionally myself. So, yeah. Although my favorite was I had a couple of months ago, I had on Steve Postel and Danny Korchmar.
Oh, yeah.
And the sound was terrible.
Oh, no.
And it was on their end.
Okay.
So I was happy about that.
You're off the hook.
Yeah. I got these two engineering wizards, and their sound was terrible.
Wow, that's hilarious.
Cooch tried to blame it on me, though. Anyway, I wasn't having any of that. So, well, thank you for coming on. This should be a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. So, you've got a new album out, but what I like to do to figure out a little bit more, I guess maybe understand my guests' new releases, is to find out how you got started in the first place. Was there a lot of music growing up? I think I remember reading or hearing that your dad was a guitarist.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely where it starts for me. And I think I've kind of figured that out and appreciated it a lot more over the years, kind of looking back, and not taking it for granted. When you're little, it's just your world is all the things around you, and you don't really question it. You're just sort of yeah, this is what I do, and this is my thing.
Right.
So there were always guitars around the house, and my dad played in kind of a wedding band, a function band kind of thing, parties and stuff like that. And so yeah, he played a lot of music around the house. I remember a lot of records and tapes and things like that, all kinds of different stuff. But what I mostly remember is him playing the guitar, not even necessarily for me, but me just kind of being in the room or being near it and watching it and really kind of being in awe that a person could do this. It wasn't just this a mythology thing, on a record or something that was made in a faraway land.
Right.
It was, you can actually do this. This is a thing that people do, And the thing I always remember really vividly is he would have a gig, a wedding gig or something on a Friday or Saturday night. And then he'd come home late, and I was little, so I'd be asleep, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then the next morning I'd wake up and the guitar case and the amp in the cover would be in the kitchen, and these things that I knew made music, they would like just be in there. And I would kind of, I don't know, it was this very like, it had a hold over me, like these little magic boxes full of little magic things,
Yeah.
So I would just kind of stare at them or like be near them. And in those days, we're talking the 80s here, like you could smoke inside still, which, I don't come from like a family of smokers, but the guitar case and the amp, they would smell like cigarettes, because it would be like this Friday night party in like 1986 or something.
Yeah.
And so I remember it's not like a good association, but I just remember like that smell actually takes me back to like, oh yeah, that's the smell of like the guitar case or the amp or whatever,
Oh, that's amazing.
So I still kind of get that sense, but I remember like I would, hope that like, my dad would wake up, maybe he would play something for me, or I probably would bug him to like set it up and plug it in. And he would play stuff for me, just, simple little like minor chords or major chords. And, it gave me a feeling of like how music can sort of convey emotion in a way too. And this is all like, I'm really little, so these are things I think back, like, not everybody has that experience and not everybody is that close to it early on. So I'm really fortunate for them.
And what's amazing is, back when you're that little, you don't realize that not everybody has that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it just becomes part of your world.
My parents were great. They were like always really supportive of me. The music thing was cool. It's really, really nice. So when did you start playing music? What instrument did you start with? Well, I remember in school, like grade school, you could choose where I grew up in Agawam, Massachusetts, in Western Mass. You could pick, you could either start with like violin or like flute or something. It was just like these two like disparate camps. Like you could do either this one or that one, and that's it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember, or like chorus or something,
Yeah.
And so I remember honestly thinking like, well, the guitar kind of maybe is like the violin, with the strings and stuff. So I was like, I'd like to learn that one, I guess, if I have to choose, So I started on violin for a couple years, and that was cool. I don't think I ever got that great at it, but it was fun to figure out how to make noise, and then they would offer like band instruments later, like, trumpet, saxophone, all that stuff. And I picked the trombone.
Oh, wow.
Well, I picked that because my dad told me he used to play trombone in high school. Oh,
wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, all these stories, they make me realize when I was young, I was like, yep, I want to be like him,
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So I learned trombone. I did that for a few years. And then in tandem, when I got into high school, I started playing guitar also.
Oh,
okay. And then eventually I kind of dropped the horn and just stayed with the guitar. But, guitar was never like sanctioned by school. It was kind of like this sort of like little bastard family thing. Like you couldn't really do guitar lessons in school. It was like just band stuff. So my dad gave me my first lessons, showed me chords and a couple little songs and how chords worked and stuff. And so I was doing that separate. The band thing at school and this music program at school was like horn, trombone in that case.
Yeah.
And then guitar was like my own thing after. And then eventually they let me play guitar like in the jazz band at school.
Oh, cool.
And I think I even finagled my way into playing the guitar in the marching band at school.
Oh,
which
wow.
Not like marching, but they would do they do the show in the football game.
Oh yeah. Well, all three of my kids do that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there's the halftime show, and then so I think I was able to talk him into doing like something with a guitar feature one year. So I remember like the whole season, I would like just play guitar in the middle of the 50-yard line.
Yeah, you're in the pit, huh?
Yeah, but it was right in the middle up front because you couldn't move with it. So the whole band's like doing these marching like craziness behind me, and I'm just kind of up front trying to wail. It was pretty fun. I remember that.
Oh, that is awesome. It's actually marching season as we record this is about to start, and my daughter's a drum major this year. And
it's an autumn thing. I think about it with I don't really do like sports. I'm a big Red Sox fan, but I don't really know too many sports. But I do know football is like autumn, and I can remember that because of doing those shows, smelling the leaves in the air and that kind of thing.
It's magical, man. There is just something about it. I love marching season. All three of my kids have gone through it. My youngest is a senior this year, and she's the drum major. So it's just
cool.
Yeah, it's our last year of marching season.
Okay,
it's a little sad.
Better enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh, we go to every single competition. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with the stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Try doing that in person. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to Performance Anxiety listeners, you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. That's betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. But, all right, so when did you start playing in bands and deciding to play out in public?
Well, that would probably be in high school, too, around this time. I had some friends in high school that did music, and, I just met them in school, and we were friends anyways, and so we were trying to write songs together. I think that was with a couple of probably 2 or 3 different bands. And I remember right away, it was about trying to write our own music.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of interesting too, as you kind of meet other people and look back and stuff. It wasn't really cover band stuff. It was, we all had different bands we liked, and we had records we liked and in common. And I think those guys were writing their own songs. So to us, it made sense. Like, yeah, we should try to write our own songs too. It's funny because some people will see that and they'll say, yeah, I love these songs. We should learn to play these songs. And then I think some other people go, I love these bands. They write their own music. We should write our own music.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And there's nobody telling you what to do at that age, usually, about it. So people just kind of figure it out one way or another.
Right.
It's weird how it happens. But so there were a couple of bands like that. And I think a few of them did like little high school party functions kind of thing, or like house parties or whatever. But the first time I remember doing like a real gig, what I considered like a real gig, was when my dad would ask me to sub for him in his wedding band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were called Summer Breeze. And I remember they were like, I don't know if he was, I didn't really ask him about it, but I can't remember if he was trying to phase himself out of having to go out on the weekends and do this, or if he was just trying to give me a confidence boost or whatever, but probably a combination. But at some point he would be like, yeah, you want to do this? We did a couple together. I remember that, like some Christmas parties.
Oh, nice.
And so he was next to me, like telling me the chords and stuff. And that band is all his friends, so I'm trying not to embarrass him. And they're like way older than me, so I'm trying to keep up. And then I remember he sent me on a couple by myself. So yeah, it was cool. I mean, I learned a lot. Mostly, I was really nervous.
I bet, yeah.
I was talking about this the other day. I don't think I've done a lot of shows and stuff since then. Luckily. And some have been like crazy situations or whatever, but I don't think I've still ever been as nervous on a gig as I was those first ones where I was filling in for him, like trying not to make a mistake,
Oh gosh. Well, yeah. I mean, he meant so much to you,
It meant a lot. And it was, I already kind of knew that concept of like, if you screw up, you don't get called back, or it looks bad on the other person, or like that was, for whatever reason, I knew that already at like 15, 16. But, it'd be like, am I going to come in at the right spot for the solo and Johnny Be Good? Or am I going to forget the what's that Procol Harum tune? You hear it all the weddings.
Nights in White Satin.
Something like that. Am I going to forget those chords? Or, But I think I did all right. So,
was that when you kind of got the bug to become a professional musician?
That was that was when I knew that I didn't want to do anything else.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know that it was so clear that I could do it like as a job necessarily. I just remember like, this is really fun, and this is really, and kind of beyond fun, fun, but I found it fulfilling in some way that, maybe some like high school kids find sports fulfilling, or whatever, like when people find their thing. I felt like I really clicked with this thing, and I was like, wow, okay, I thought I need to find a way to keep doing this, but I didn't really know what that meant,
So is that what brought you to Rutgers to study jazz, or was it something else?
Yeah, I knew I had to go to college. I mean, I think for a while I kind of thought maybe I'd go into, I had a couple other career choices. I was either going to, so it's just such a trip back memory lane. Wow. All my high school memories. Like I remember in my mind, my career choices were like, okay, maybe I would like to be an architect, which I don't know, but I'm not really that good with math. So that was kind of that.
Oh, okay.
And then the thing I was really thinking about was that I wanted to be a park ranger for like the National Park Service.
Oh, wow.
I thought the idea that I could be like in Yellowstone for like months at a time and just coming out to get the mail or something was like really attractive,
Just hanging out in Yellowstone for a while.
Just kind of keeping tabs on the land, but then I was thinking like, well, what do I really like to do? And that's music. And so I thought, well, maybe I should just try to do music. But I think, and I'm happy. My parents were kind of like, they didn't say it explicitly, but I think they would have maybe not been as supportive if I was like, I'm not going to go to college. But I wanted to learn a lot anyway. I wanted to learn about it, and it seemed like an easy way to learn about music all in one place. So I ended up going to Rutgers. I met a guitar teacher named Ted Dunbar, who was down there at the time. He's passed away a long time since.
Okay.
But he taught at like a summer jazz camp up at UMass Amherst that I went to. And I really loved the way he talked about music, and sort of like really admitted this fact that it was this really emotional thing, and how do you draw these different feelings out of music. He was a very jazz focused player and teacher, which is great. I mean, I love all kinds of stuff, and I learned a lot from him. He was playing Tony Williams' Lifetime band.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he did all these amazing gigs, and he was really cool. So I got about a year and a half with him before he passed away. And at that point, I just stayed there at Rutgers in New Jersey because it was I had friends there, and it was near New York.
Oh yeah,
so I could get in and out, which
I go to New Brunswick all the time.
Yeah, I got a lot of value out of that, like going to just hear tons of music and meet other people my age that were listening to music in New York that weren't at school or weren't at the same school or whatever. People I still am in touch with, and then I could go back and do my classwork and learn about harmony and stuff like that. And it was cool, and I was able to gig a bunch in school and do okay. So
that's some cool places there. I mean, the Court Tavern, Melody, those are some awesome places to play.
Oh, okay. You spent time in New Brunswick. You're naming all the spots now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Court Tavern.
Buddies, I think we're pretty close to the same age. I had friends who were playing in New Brunswick for years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't remember the band. I don't know if you. I don't know what you were listening to back then, but I had friends in Sticks and Stones, X Number 5, The Fire Still Burns, Muskellunge.
Oh man!
So all these New Brunswick punk bands.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow. So
did you go to Rutgers with jazz in mind, or did you pick up on the jazz while you were there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd already been like into learning jazz.
Okay.
But I'd also, I'd come up listening to all kinds of stuff. Like like the I hate to use the word, but the grunge scene was in full effect when I was in high school, and labels aside, a lot of that music, like I love, like Nirvana was like huge for me. And like, I think everybody else my age, But it kind of like led me back to learn about other bands, especially a lot of like West Coast bands in that kind of scene in that time. And then all sorts of different kinds of music. But then I was also checking out John Coltrane and Miles Davis. And I really liked those Electric Miles bands back then for sure. Early on, I still do, but early on, that was the thing. Cause I was like, oh, that's kind of a rock band, but it's kind of like this jazz thing. So that was an easy entrance for me. And another easy entrance for me was the Jeff Beck album Wired that my dad had, because he plays on that record a version of Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, which is a Charles Mingus tune written for Lester Young, right? And so I love that song. And I didn't realize it wasn't a Jeff Beck tune for a while, I don't think, until I was like looking at the record and going, oh, who's this Charles Mingus guy? So I went out and got some Mingus records. So, when you come up like that and there's all this stuff swirling around, I think it becomes confusing when you're kind of confronted with another part of the way other people see like music. And they're like, so what kind of music do you play?
Right.
And you go, it's like asking you like, what's your favorite baseball team? Because you can't have two.
Right. Exactly.
And I remember that's like such a bizarre idea. Like, what do you mean? What kind of music do I play? Like,
a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. But the college thing was like, I liked working with Ted, and I knew like you could learn important stuff from jazz, and you could learn important stuff from rock, and you could learn important stuff from classical music. And I already kind of had that feeling. So when I wanted to go continue studying with Ted and go to college for music, the choices are you do classical or you do jazz. Right. There's no rock music major or whatever, right. I mean, at least not at that time at any school that was in my budget, Right. So, so it just seemed obvious. Like, well, I'm not really going to, classical guitar is like amazing and gorgeous, but it's its own thing. Yeah. Like I would have had to like completely start over the way I'd been learning guitar to really play classical. I mean, I can kind of fake some stuff, and it's really, really gorgeous. And I like trying to learn some of those pieces, but I'm not going to say I'm actually a classical guitarist at all. So it made more sense for me to just go, well, I can do the jazz program, and you still get to talk about improvisation and stuff like that. So It made sense. Yeah.
You had, I was reading about a couple of some of the accomplishments, and I was curious if this was the, before college, during college. So you were a finalist for the Fish Middleton Jazz Scholarship Competition, one of 7 international guitarists to compete in the Gibson Jazz Guitar Composition at Montreux Jazz Festival, and you won an ASCAP Young Composer Award.
Yeah, those the last one was just right after college, but the other 2 were during college. Yeah. Wow,
I can imagine being in a college age kid and playing at Montreux Jazz Festival.
Well, I'll tell you what else. Now you imagine doing that, and you look in the front row, and right in the front row, in the middle of the front row, sitting in like this giant throne, is George Benson with his arms folded, kind of staring at you. And I didn't really expect that. I remember I walked out on stage, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, so no big deal."
Just another guy in the crowd.
Natural.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, no, gosh.
I got to meet him after that. He was really cool. Well, he was old friends with Ted Dunbar, my teacher too. So, So I got to talk with him about, Ted had actually passed on at that point. So I got to talk to him about Ted for a while. So it was really cool. Yeah,
that is awesome.
Very sweet.
So after college, you moved to New York City. Was that to find work as a musician, or was it to just...
Well, it was just to kind of keep playing. And it didn't really last that long, actually, at that point. A lot of music I liked was being played by people that lived in New York, and I just sort of had been around it from being in New Jersey at college. So it just sort of seemed like, I'll just go there. I won't have to take the train back and forth and, get some dumb job or whatever. And this is, this is like the summer of 2001. And I ended up living in Jersey City, right across the Hudson from downtown Manhattan. And I remember like, it's this little September 11th story, but I remember like going outside to move my car for street cleaning that morning, and it's like 7 a.m. or whatever. And I go to move my car, I wake up, move my car so I don't get a ticket, and then hope I can fall back asleep. Right.
Right.
So I go out and I'm moving my car, and it's like in Jersey City, it's like pandemonium. There's like just people running around the street, like screaming, like, and I'm like not privy to what's going on. And I'm kind of like, man, this is some stuff's going down, whatever it is. So I find a parking space and I park, and I'm half asleep, and I'm like walking back to my building, and there's some guys like running by, and I go, hey, is something going on?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And so he tells me the deal, and I was like, what? That's crazy. And then so I was on the bottom floor of this 2-story building, and I went in, and out the window you could actually see, in the distance you could see the towers, kind of, and so you could see all the smoke. It was really bizarre. It was a messed up kind of thing.
Gosh,
it was heavy. It was really heavy,
Yeah,
and like obviously, and then at that point, it was actually funny too, because in that same kind of zone, I was having this idea, like I didn't. How should I say this? I knew I wanted to only do music, but I didn't know if it was like a truly like honest thing that I needed to do.
Okay.
So I was having these ideas, like, I would go out to hear a lot of music back then. I still try to as much as I can. And I would have these moments of like, these like super young, 20 judgmental, egotistical moments where I'd be like listening to something. I'd be like, man, I feel like this band is pretty good, but like, I think this one guy, I feel like his heart's not in it or something,
Wow.
And it wasn't so like brutal like that,
Right.
Just like a passing thought in my mind or something. But as it pertained to me, I remember thinking like, I never want to be giving that impression to anybody, which of course, like you don't, if that's not your vibe. I learned later, but in my mind, I was like, I need to make sure that I'm 100% supposed to be doing this, not 90%, not 95%, because I don't want to be I don't want to be like the person bringing down the music.
Right.
And like, maybe you're just unaware. You're like, oh yeah, this is better than being a trash collector or something. So I'll just keep trying to do this as long as I can, even if I'm kind of faking it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a weird thought. I'm sure nobody I saw actually felt that way, but just in my mind, it was this self-reflective kind of thing. Like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm not the jive dude in the band, because that sucks,
Right.
So my solution, which is even more bizarre, my solution was like, I'm going to quit playing. And if I start playing again in a natural way, like an unforced way, then that means that I was meant to play music.
Okay.
A really roundabout thing,
I can kind of understand that, though.
If you love something, set it free.
I did,
right.
I did
kind
that.
Of thing.
See, I did that with photography.
Oh, okay.
I went to college for photography. I did it for like 12, 15 years. And I got so burnt out on doing the same. I was the guy just phoning it in after a while, just because it was all the same. It was all weddings, and I hate weddings.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
I was living in Southeast Alabama at the time. And so there's not a huge market for somebody with who's gone to college for photography. So I ended up doing whatever work I could get. And it was
for sure
a lot of portraits, school photos, things like weddings, and I just got burnt out on it, and I put it down for a while. My wife and I got married, had kids, started a career, and I still would do it for myself, but not professionally in any sense. And I've just kind of started doing. I've figured out what I love doing is music photography. So I'll go to concerts and I'll get a media pass and I'll go and I'll shoot the band.
Right.
So that's how I got back into it with a passion. So
yeah,
I know what you're saying.
And I bet it feels like more like an honest thing for you. Like, oh, this is what it was supposed to be like or something.
Yeah. Now I'm not getting paid for any of it, but I still get to do it. So,
well, we don't need to talk about that.
But I've gotten to see some awesome bands. A lot of people that I've had on the podcast. So it's,
yeah, that's cool. That's great.
It's a blast. So we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about socks for a second. Why not? It's a music podcast. But I tried a pair of socks from Boldfoot and loved them. I've only worn them once because my kids have stolen them. So in my household, that's the best endorsement I can give. And I guess it's fitting because the design I chose was Jailbird. The design I chose was Jailbird. I might keep that in. The socks are 100% American made, and 5% of all proceeds go to veteran charities. It makes sense, seeing that Boldfoot is a family and veteran-owned company. They have a huge variety of styles. So check out boldfoot.com and buy some of the best socks you've ever slapped on your feet. And help veterans while you're at it. That's boldfoot.com. So, all right, so what made you get back into music after your hiatus?
Well, so I moved back to Western Massachusetts for a couple of years, and I didn't like get rid of the guitars. I had the guitar and stuff, and I would pick it up sometimes and play it. But I remember like I was working some dumb jobs. I remember like delivering phone books for a while. That was,
oh man, I sold ads for the Yellow Pages when I first moved up to Virginia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We've got this weird thing going here tonight.
That sounds better than actually like physically delivering them, though. Like that was just a nightmare. Like nothing about delivering phone books is set up to be easy.
No.
From filling your car to like watching your car like lower by like several inches on the shocks to then driving them. And I remember they had this rule, like you couldn't throw the phone book. You had to get out and put the phone book on the step, like this particular phone book company, and
wow.
And they said, if we get calls that you're throwing the phone book, and we're not going to be able to pay you,
Oh, wow.
It's just like all this bizarre stuff. So I was like, okay, whatever. So I did that for a little while. Anyways, point being, I wasn't trying to like be a guitarist or play or whatever. But what would happen is eventually I would start playing again, just kind of naturally. Like and it wasn't with a practicing mindset. It wasn't like, okay, I got to practice this, and this. It was just like, oh, I heard this song on the radio today in the car that I really liked that I've never heard before. And maybe it's like, just some pop song, just some candy pop song kind of thing. But
yeah,
maybe it'd be fun. Something about it stuck in my ear. I'd like to learn the chords. So I'd go home and I'd find the song and I'd play along with it or whatever. Or I'd hear it again and try to memorize it or something. And I would do that, and then that would be it. And then I'd have my dinner and go to bed or whatever. And so, but that kept happening. And it kept happening so frequently to a point where I was like, oh, I'm sitting here trying to play guitar every day and I'm just doing whatever I want. I mean, I've always liked practicing all kinds of different stuff, but there was no agenda, and it felt really natural. And in that, after a little bit of doing that, I took that as the sign that I'd kind of been like, oh, okay, so here I am. I tried to get rid of this thing, or I tried to get away from it. And it came back in a different way. It kind of snuck up on me in a way where it made itself feel much more important than it already was. And it was already important.
Right. Okay.
So I think I stayed up there for another year or so, playing with as many people as I could find. And then I moved back to New York.
Okay.
And then I was there for about 15 years or so. Yeah.
Okay. So when did you start, I guess this is the best way to phrase it. I saw your first album credit is J.C. Falk. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so how did you get into the recording aspect of it? Were you just gigging around and somebody suggested it, or were you called in, or?
Well, let's see, that one, that was probably that was the first thing I did that actually became like a record. And it was this guy J.C. Falk, who I knew like peripherally through some other friends, actually from New Brunswick, and he was like a booking agent or something, but he didn't live there. I think he lived in Savannah because that's where I had to go eventually to meet up with him. But he was putting out this record, putting together some bands for some people, and I got into this fold. And so when he was making his own record, I got to play on it.
Oh, okay.
But I had to go to Savannah to do some tracks, I remember.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was funny. He was a nice guy. I don't even know if that album's around. I don't even know if I have a copy. I have no idea if you can find it or whatever. But
I was looking for it on YouTube
how'd you do
hear
it?
I couldn't. I saw some J.C. Falk stand up, but no.
Oh, like comedy?
Yeah.
Really?
But no, nothing from a place within. So I don't.
Okay, maybe it's lost to time. I don't know.
It might be.
But I do. I mean, I think it wasn't. I don't think that was like, okay, here's my first time in a studio. I think I'd done a bunch of like projects with people that never turned into records. Like people were making demos or little demo EPs to try to get gigs, and like they would maybe book a studio to get it to sound like real pro,
Yeah.
Because also this would have been really early, like 2000, 2001, 99 or something. Like, I don't think the home studio thing was what it is now. You know, like,
for sure.
You still, like, if you wanted the thing to sound good, you'd book time and you'd go to a real place and let the pros handle it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Nobody's Billie Eilish.
So I do remember like going to places and like doing little projects here and there, but eventually I think, yeah, for me, it just was always about trying to make great music, and whoever that was with, if it was a project I was doing and they were into it, it seems the natural progression that they'd then want to record it. So that was usually how it came about. So
was Tin Bag the first project that you did, that you recorded, like a first solo thing, or was you up front?
The first solo thing I did was a record called Canto, and that is a solo record of all prepared guitar music.
I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the very first thing I did. And okay. I remember about that. That was really fun to do. And we can talk about that in a second. But I remember thinking, like, it's probably a little weird to make your first record just be like solo prepared guitar.
Yeah.
Device prepared guitar. But it was what I was actually exploring a lot. So again, that natural progression, it was like, well, this is what I'm doing in my free time. This is, I was listening to a lot of Fred Frith and Derek Bailey and Sonny Chirac, although I don't know if he really did a lot of preparations, but his noise thing was really influential to me in that moment, still is.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what was on my radar. So what I was working on, it made sense, like, well, I think I have some individualistic kind of angle on this view, and I'd like to try it out. So that was why that happened first. That was just where I was. I wasn't doing anything else that I thought was like so that I could confidently say, like, oh yeah, this is like a very personal contribution to this right now, outside of that. So it made sense to do it.
So what were you doing as a prepared guitar? I know I've had some composers on who play prepared piano, but so how would you apply that to a guitar? Well, there's a great set of pieces by John Zorn, the composer and improviser, it's called The Book of Heads. Okay. And there's a great recording of all these works by Mark Ribot, who I think that's probably the original recording of the work. I think Zorn wrote them for Chadbourne, like in mind, Eugene Chadbourne. Okay. Or at least I think there's an inscription. I have the score here, so maybe it's just the inscription. But I think Ribot's made an album of it. I think that's the first album. But and they're all written by Zorn, and that's like a study in applying preparation to guitar. Okay. I mean, really like genius stuff, the way it works. But, the basic idea is not different from prepared piano, which, if you're familiar with that, you're familiar with the John Cage pieces for sure. Yeah. The basic rundown is you attach little like bits of like trash or whatever to different parts of the strings. Not trash, it could be whatever. Yeah. Things that kind of accentuate different aspects of the sound. It makes the string resonate in a different way. Maybe it gives it a different percussive quality. Maybe it affects the decay of the note, or maybe it brings out different overtones in the string, stuff like that, Right. And it's a pretty easy analog to take that piano idea and put it to guitar because it's still on the string. Right. So for me, it was a combination. For the Canto record, it was a combination of like alligator clips and nuts and bolts screwed to different parts of the strings to bring different overtones out. There's like a kind of a percussive-y sort of like a tine, like you would find on a kalimba. Oh, okay. Threaded through the strings. Oh, wow. I think there was some balloons involved at one point. And that's like I'm straight up stealing that from the Book of Heads. There's a lot of balloon work in that. Really? Yeah. What's a studio session without balloon work? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I put it as a double on the critics. Missed opportunity. That could be your next album, balloon work.
Let me write that
Mike
down.
Baggetta. What do you play? The balloon. And all right. So,
But I still keep some of that stuff. I haven't done like a full-on prepared guitar concert in a while. I did one a couple of years ago, actually. I did a set. I forget where. But, I have my little practice area back here. I have a chopstick that I still utilize quite a bit.
oh, cool.
I have a couple clips I'll put on strings still. But it's fun to try to incorporate that into different types of music where it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm going to a avant-garde, free-form weirdo noise show. Of course, the guy's going to have a chopstick in his guitar. Like you could be playing with a singer-songwriter or a rock band, or you can incorporate it. I mean, Sonic Youth, of course, is like famous for all that kind of stuff. But trying to figure out how to combine the world of like normal technique and extended technique into this amalgamation of just, again, getting back to that thing of like just music. You don't have to worry about what it is, or just. I don't want to have any limitations or rules on anything. So those kinds of things that can go hand in hand to me.
All right. So that brings up something I wanted to ask you about. I heard a story about a time that you went to go into the studio and work on an album, and the producer got everything set up, left, you played for an hour, and the music wasn't there. Does that change the approach to everything you do afterwards?
You're talking about my friend Chris Schlarb.
Yes, I am.
Runs Big Ego Studio, Big Ego Record. That was the first, that's a true story. And that's the first, that was the first day of recording for what ended up being the Wallflowers record, which is the first record I got to do with Jim Keltner and Mike Watt. But I knew I wanted to put a couple solo pieces on there. So the first day was just solo. So, and that was actually the first time really working with Chris as the producer and engineer. We'd become friends pretty quickly. I think we were like in touch over email or something. Like you have those friends that you've known for a long time. And like, in this case, like we're so close, I don't even remember how we met.
Yeah.
It sort of seems like, I know he hasn't always been there, but in my mind, like, yeah, we've known each other for 1,000 years, Yep, but that wasn't always the case. So this was the first time that we worked together, and I had made records before under my own name with the Fresh Sound New Talent label and over in Barcelona and stuff. And I had a good amount of recording experience, I guess. And so I had some ideas about what I wanted to do. I will say this: I never worked with like an actual quote unquote capital P producer before. You know? The decisions about what was going to get recorded and what was going to sound good, or what I wanted the vibe of the thing to be like, was always from me making the records. Which has its ups and downs, but and so I remember I went in there and he was like, "So what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, I got some ideas, so I figured I would just get set up and just improvise for a while, and then we can sort through it." And I think I remember him kind of looking at me, and he goes like, "Okay." And then he did, so I didn't think anything of it. I set up and, I did that. And I think maybe he even split at one point, like he went out to lunch or whatever. And I was like,
he'll be fine. I'll just go get some lunch.
Yeah, where is he gone? Is he still there? And so, I played, and then he came back, and, I was like, all right, that might be cool. Let's go check out what we got. The room. And I was like, all right, should we check some of it out? And he was like, "Oh man, I don't know what happened to it. I don't. The actual details are escaping me, but it was something like, yeah, I guess I didn't record it, or like I recorded it and something's happened to the heart. It was, it really seemed real. Like he
honestly thought he had recorded it. Was it making?
Yeah. Like it was just this huge mistake. And I remember being like, what the heck? This is total bull, in my mind. And I was like, okay. And then like I went outside and I like walked around the block and I was like, oh man, this is going to be a huge mistake. Oh, what have I done? So I'm walking around the block kind of stewing in my own little universe, and then I have this realization. I was like, well, you know what, if I don't know what to do, maybe I should go back and ask him what he thinks we should do. Cause that's his deal, right? That's what a producer does, right? I don't know. So I go back and we have this little talk and he's like, well, all is not lost. Let's go back. And I think at that point I understood it could be a collaboration with someone that's not actually playing with you. I never really got that before. And I didn't really have the opportunity to work with anyone like that before. So it was a really important moment, to go like, oh yeah, this friend of mine can help me do something that I wouldn't have been able to come up with on my own.
Right.
That's why it's cool if you find somebody to work with in that role. It's not just like, oh, this guy who's just pushing buttons in the other room. Like,
right. Yeah.
I mean, it can be that at its worst, but like ideally if it's a collaborative thing. And so I understood with him for the first time what it's really like to work with a producer. And it was because I had that moment of like, well, what I just did is gone. And then I sort of like gave him a lot of shit about that. Like, I know you were faking it. You probably recorded it. And I think for like years, it was like, yeah, no, I really lost it. And then he sent me some files, maybe not that long ago. And I was listening to him and I'm listening and I'm like, what is this? And I realized it's that first hour. I hadn't heard it in like years.
Oh my gosh.
He still won't tell me if he did it on purpose or not.
He's a good producer. So how did you get Jim Keltner and Mike Watt involved in the project?
Well, that idea was mine, but again, Chris Flarb kind of pulled the strings and made the actual physical thing happen.
Okay.
Chris had just opened his studio in Long Beach, California, called Big Ego Studios, and he wanted to start a record label to go along with it, Big Ego Records. And so I think he'd asked me if I would be interested in doing something for him. And I had been making records for a label out of Barcelona called Fresh Sound New Talent, which I was really happy to do. Like this guy Jordy Pujol runs that, and he's a really generous guy. And I think he's probably one of the last people in the business that actually listens to like every demo he receives. And if he likes the music, then he'll work something out with you. That's how it happened with me. There's no reason it would have. Otherwise I sent him something and he listened to it and he said, yeah, let's do something. So I ended up doing three or four records for him. And
was it with the quartet?
Yeah, it's quartet stuff. And then the last one was a trio called Spectre with Jerome Harris on bass.
That's really awesome. And the source material, I love.
That was the second Fresh Sound record. Yeah.
That's Nathan. I love that. I love Nathan. That's a great song.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That was written for my friend, Nathan. So I'd made 4 records with Jordy for Fresh Sound, and I think we were starting to talk about a 5th one. And Chris had asked me about doing something for his label, and that was probably the first time, like in a musical setting, I was like, "Oh man, is somebody going to be bugged that I'm doing something with somebody else?" And I kind of felt like I think Jordy liked when people were like just doing stuff for him. I've never talked to him about it, so I don't know, but that was just sort of the impression I got. And then I think I did the Wall of Flowers record with Chris. And then when it came out, there was like very little contact available with Jordy after that. So the writing was on the wall. Yeah. But it was okay because I felt like I could do whatever I wanted with Chris. I felt like I could do whatever I wanted with Jordy too, but it was just a different scene. And I wanted to try something different. That was all it was. Yeah. It wasn't better or worse, but I was like, yeah, it could be interesting to do something different in a different way. So
yeah, you got to change things up every once in a while.
Yeah, it keeps it healthy and fresh, and you can't feel too bad about that kind of stuff because in the end, you got to do what is best for, in this case, the music.
Exactly.
So I said, yeah. So I said, yeah, Chris, yeah, thank you for asking me. I like to do a record, but I only want to do it if it's going to be something totally different. And so I'll give you a little more background on this because this turns into a story also.
All right.
Which is good for a podcast.
Exactly.
And so the deal was, here's another like bizarre thing looking back. Like I'd always thought, when you buy a record or you go see a band or whatever, there's a band. And for whatever reason, maybe outside of something like an orchestra, I thought like every band was like, they've just been best friends forever. That's why they're a band. I mean, when we were talking about high school, who did I start my first bands with? My friends in high school, Exactly. Who did I start bands with in college? The people I was hanging out with, And I would see people, they would just hire like a famous guy and give him like a bunch of money and they'd make a record with him or something like that. And then, I kind of had my spidey sense tingling, like that seems kind of a little bull, but whatever, I don't know,
Right.
And I think I heard like albums that were maybe pretty obviously conceived of in that way. And I think in my mind, the music wasn't like that great or not, at least the ones that I had heard. And, again, just being really young and opinionated about stuff. And so I remember thinking like, yeah, so I guess the real deal is like you start a band with your friends and that's how you get good music. Okay. So I'm like in my 30s now. Right. And I think this for whatever reason. Yeah. I've got it in my mind, like this is the right way to do it. Anything else is going to not sound 100%. So I avoided that a long time. So I would not make records unless I'd been able to like hang out with people and get to know them and maybe do a little mini tour and have a bunch of dinners and hang, I was like, okay, we're friends now. Hey, maybe we should make a record. And that was always like, oh, I did it. That's what I always thought about every band. And so there's an a little older than me guitar player, kind of friend of mine who's taught me a lot. His name is David Torn. And I remember talking to him one day. I was at his studio. We must have been mixing or mastering a project of mine. Maybe the Spectre album he mastered, and I was up there with him for that. Anyways, that's not really important. What's important is I remember asking him something about his first ECM record, which is called Cloud About Mercury. Mm-hmm. And that album has Bill Bruford, Tony Levin, and Mark Isham, I think. I'm almost 100% positive that's the band. Okay. But so I remember asking him, like, it's a really heavy band or something. Like, how did you end up meeting those guys? And I thought he was going to say like, oh yeah, well, we'd been friends for like 2 decades before that or whatever. But what he ended up telling me, this is the important part. What he ended up telling me is that he'd never met any of those guys before they made the record or before he asked them to do the record. I think he even like wrote Bruford a letter and sent it overseas or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think maybe Mick Karn was supposed to be the original bassist on that, but he was too busy or something. And there's all these stories. But anyways, the upshot was like, I was sitting there in my mind exploding, going like, you didn't know these guys for like years and years and years. You weren't like best friends. He was like, no, I was really nervous. And I'd never, I didn't know any of them. And that for me, so the light bulb was like, wait a minute, that's a great record. So maybe you don't have to be like friends for decades to make a good record. And keep in mind, I'm like 32 or 33 or something, like when finally this thing goes off, like an idiot. That was right before I think I started talking to Schlarb about this record. So when he asked me what I wanted to do to get back to the original story, I said, yeah, I would like to, but I want to do something totally different. I want to try making a record with people I've never met before and maybe who've never met each other, and see if I can try to make a good record without people that are my friends.
Right. Okay.
But Chris was my friend though, and he was the producer, but so I guess there's a little loophole there, but so anyway, so he was like, well, what do you want to do? And in my mind, just thinking about it, I was thinking like, I think it's really bizarre that nobody's ever tried to have Watt and Keltner play together, because I've listened to them in countless projects on my record player for 4 decades, like I know I don't know them, but I know there's certain things about both of their styles playing that like really speak to me and in my mind would fit together like a glove,
Okay.
And so I remember like thinking like, man, it's so weird. Nobody's thought about this yet, So I told him that was the idea. And then I think we like laughed and laughed and laughed. And then, it's like, yeah, right. And then like, so we'd kind of revisit this like harebrained scheme over the next 6 to 8 months or something. And then I think at one point we were trying to just call each other's bluff, like, well, okay, so are we actually going to do this? And I knew Chris had done some projects with Watt, so he knew him. And then I think Chris also tracked down Jim through some acquaintances or something.
Okay.
And so the wheels just started turning and we found a date. I think I sent out some demos that maybe he sent them and they listened to. And this is like another mystery that I've never really asked them about, like why they agreed to do this project. Like I'm totally thankful and I learned so much from those guys in so many ways. And, I'm like indebted, like up to my teeth to both of them. But I can only assume they heard something and they were like, okay, this sounds interesting. And that's really cool. I mean, that's a good lesson to remember. Like it still is about the music, for guys like that who have, in the sense that they've done all this music for decades and it's all great music. Maybe it's all great music because they really just want to make great music, like there's no head games or like smoke and mirrors. It's just like, they want to make great music and they keep finding ways to do it.
Yeah.
And luckily these albums are kind of the benefactors of some of that stuff. So that was how that happened.
So the first album, Wall of Flowers, that was all done in one day?
Yeah. 2019.
Jeez.
Maybe I forget when, if it was maybe late spring or something or summertime or something.
That's amazing to me. That it's such a great album. I'm Not a Data Point. I love that song. The title track, Wall of Flowers, is great. Hospital Song. These are just awesome tracks. I can't believe that. Was any of it planned beforehand, or were you guys just improvising the whole thing? I know you said you'd had a couple things that you wanted to do before, but... No,
I had a stack of music I came with, and we did almost none of it. So, thankfully, because it worked out to be a better thing. But it was another lesson for me, just like the solo thing with, having to start over with input.
Right.
That was kind of in a different, it's actually funny. I hadn't really thought about it this way until now, you asking me, but it kind of was the same sort of thing. Like everyone has a different way of working. Like every musician has a different way of working.
Sure.
And I think I had been a little in the dark about that to some extent. Like I just worked with people that all kind of worked the same way, more or less. And I think the way that both Jim and Watt work is not only different from each other, but it's also different from some of the things that I was used to. So it's not as easy as like you pull out a chart and you hand it out and you go, all right, let's go. And I'm thankful for that, because the reason I wanted to try to make music with them was because of the way that they impart their personalities, the way they do their thing that nobody else does,
Yeah.
And you can't get that from someone if you're forcing them to do something in a way that isn't conducive to that,
Right.
Like to say it now, it's like, yeah, of course, no duh, like it's so obvious, but I don't know, maybe I'm a slow learner, or it just takes certain things to really make it clear when it's an abstract thing like art or music or whatever. But So, I had this stack of music. I'm like, all right, we got like 18 tunes or whatever, and we started to do, the first one was just Hospital Song. And I realized like, okay, so I have to maybe talk about the song a little bit in a different way than I'm used to just sort of get something going. Not because they didn't know what to do, but just because I was like unprepared to work with those guys.
Okay.
And they were like super gracious about being patient with me and stuff. And again, just I learned so much from them that day, not only about how to adapt quickly to get something, but how to trust the people you're working with too. I could imagine if I was a different type of person or a different type of musician, if I had brought in all these plans and for whatever reason realized it wasn't going to go my way, I could have like thrown a fit and canceled the whole thing and split and like dogged everybody. And, that's that's stupid.
Right.
But B, like, you're sitting there with these people who, are like incredible, and you just have to figure out a way to kind of get into something. So we did Hospital Song. Took a break and we were hanging out, just rapping and getting to know each other and stuff. And then I think I was talking to Chris. I was like, maybe is it cool if we just try to like improvise together and just maybe we should try that. He's the one putting out the record, so I wanted to kind of ask him about it too. And I think he was like, yeah, that's cool. So I asked Jim and Mike if they want to do that. And they were like, yeah, sure, we're down for it. And so we just went and we improvised for like 3 hours.
Wow.
Maybe 2.5 hours or something. So and it was like amazing, really fun. And in those moments, my internal dialogue is like, stop playing so much. Stop playing so much. You're ruining it.
I know what you mean.
More thoughtful, be better. But so we got into all kinds of different grooves, and Watt would set up something and Jim would set up something. And I think I set up a couple of things. And so I was like, wow, that was really fun. And then I think we did one more of the songs that I brought, Wall of Flowers. And we also did Blue Velvet.
That's awesome.
In a couple of different ways. That was just a duo with Jim on that one. And and at the end of the day, it was like really, I was so fun. It was so fun. And those guys were so cool and so generous and so like just musically heavy and personally like very comfortable and just very positive and encouraging, which again, like I don't, they had no reason to be. I'm like this weird dude with like a bunch of music, and then we just improvised for 3 hours. So they were really, 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 really gracious. And but I remember at the end thinking like, man, I don't know if we have a record. We had like 2 songs and like a bunch of improv, And so I got home and I took the improvised sections and I started listening to them a lot and chopping them up into things that I thought could be songs, or these things that were like maybe the listener wouldn't know if they were songs or if they were improvisations. And another kind of little trick that was put in my ear from David Torn is like, if you have an improvised piece, you can go back and edit it. You can go back and add to it. So I would find these little spots, these like little 5, 6, 7, 10-minute spots that had a little compositional arc somehow. And the things that I thought spoke to me in that like a composition, I would transcribe them.
Oh, wow.
And then I'd maybe write out harmonies, and then I'd overdub guitar parts that kind of brought those things out.
Oh, wow.
Because I like that idea of like a listener, you don't know what's happening. Like, is this improvised? Well, then how is this happening?
Yeah, exactly.
And it can't be composed because they're doing all this. So what is it? I like that,
Yeah, and that comes through in both of the albums. It's amazing.
Oh, good. Cool.
Which actually brings me to a question that I had for both of these albums with this trio. When you're improvising, are you not just improvising with the song structure, but are you also kind of improvising with guitar tones and sounds and bass and drum tones and sounds? Because you get some really different sounds on there. Like, yank it out.
Oh yeah, well that's Watt's tune.
Okay,
Mike Watt wrote that one.
You've got this nasty, gnarly guitar tone on that. And it's brilliant. I love it. I mean, was that something that you came in saying, yeah, I want to play around with this? Or are you messing around with stuff while you're improvising?
Like that very particular instance, like I think the spot you're talking about is probably mostly the solos, guitar solo section, you can call it or whatever, like Watt's playing the ostinato thing. Yeah, I think I just had a fuzz pedal on and I just went to 10 on it.
Okay.
But I think that's kind of just in the moment sort of things. I have I have little devices that I use, like just talking about like actual like effects, I have like a few go-to things that I always use. And so feel like I know them pretty well. Like I try to think about if I'm going to use effects with electric guitar, as most electric guitarists do, maybe. I don't like the idea of just kind of throwing it on and you still do whatever you do. But I do like the idea of trying to interact with what it does, So if I'm going to use a certain thing, I'm going to feel like I should practice that thing.
Right.
Because they respond differently. It makes you play different. Or I think ideally it should make you play different. Otherwise, why are you doing it? Why are you using it?
That's a good point.
Well, because I've heard a lot of guitarists that they play and they sound like themselves and they put a different sound on and they still sound like themselves, but now it's like chorus, or whatever, which is totally great. But just for me, I want to have a more interactive relationship with the stuff,
Yeah.
But so I can be in a moment, like in a song like that, in a part, and say like, oh, it needs a little zhuzh or whatever, and I can do it with this because I've practiced it that way. So, I mean, that in particular instance is just the fuzz pedal, like kind of raging, but also the way it feeds back with the guitar and the way it kind of sustains notes a little differently, maybe makes you make different choices. Okay. And I use the whammy bar on the guitar a lot for different like inflective kind of sounds. And so that definitely is a huge thing I've had to practice a lot. And then you kind of combine those things so you can deal with the sustain from the fuzz pedal and then how you're articulating with the whammy bar inflections and stuff. So the instrument grows like exponentially. You're not just, plunking out the scale or, right. Whatever, you're really like, it becomes a vocal thing, I think,
Yeah. Well,
we know how to use our voices. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it becomes an instrument in and of itself. You're not just, playing an overdriven guitar. The overdrive or the distortion is actually doing something besides just making the guitar sound fuzzy.
Yeah, it's going to influence the choices you make. Yeah, exactly. It becomes like this other like imaginary member of the band in a way.
Between Wallflowers and Everywhen You Go, which is an interesting title. Sounds very David Torn influenced.
Well, I wonder, I'm excited to see how many places just like don't do the spell check and it gets listed as Everywhere We Go. I know what's going to happen. I don't know why I do this to myself. But, Everywhen We Go. Well, it's funny you say that because I actually got the idea from another guitarist named Henry Kaiser. He was, I don't think he was talking to me. I read it or it was something, but he was talking about the idea of everywhen. Like, the word everywhere, it's like all places being considered at once.
Right.
But the concept of everywhen of all times being considered at once is kind of interesting. And I like to think, a high aspiration, I don't actually think this, but a high aspiration, I think, for really good music is that it's a timeless thing. It's not locked into a zone of it's not jailed in sort of like a time, an era, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
And I think like being lucky enough to work with these two guys and have them be like so generous with the music, my hope is that it kind of reaches past boundaries, musical boundaries at least. So I thought it was a fitting title.
Well, before we get too deep into that, I wanted to ask you about main steam stop valve.
Oh, yeah.
Was that created to play the music of Wall of Flowers, or was it its own thing? Because it's got Watt in it too, but Keltner's not part of that.
No. Yeah, that's me. It's my band. Mike Watt plays bass, and Stephen Hodges, the great Stephen Hodges, is our drummer in that band. So that is a very different band that plays very different music, but it did form because I wanted to do a tour when Wall of Flowers came out in 2019. You know, I like doing shows and stuff. That's kind of my wheelhouse, you know, like I've been playing live for a long time. And so I figured like, okay, well, this is a cool record, so let's try to do some shows. And, you know, Jim doesn't really travel too much anymore unless it's a special thing.
Yeah.
I think he just played with Clapton in Japan or something like that. So,
man,
well, you know, I can take it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd probably do that too.
If you want to come on the podcast, I'd do it.
Actually, I probably wouldn't do that, but yeah. So anyways, so he didn't want to travel for this. And I said, that's cool. You don't have to worry about anything. Thank you so much for doing this. And I was talking to Watt, and he was still down to do some shows. So I was like, is it weird to just have a different drummer? It wasn't on the record, because that's kind of, you know, I don't ever want to like front with my music, you know,
right.
If it feels weird, it's going to feel weird, you know, and I don't want it to be on somebody else. Like, oh, I'm filling in for so-and-so. Like, I don't dig that thing either. So, I was thinking about it for a while, and I think I went back and forth with Watt about it for a little while, and he was like, well, why don't you just come up with some different music, or we can come up with some different songs, and then it'll be a different project or something. And I thought, okay, well, yeah, maybe that makes sense. And so I was thinking about who to ask, kind of because I wanted to keep in the spirit of this thing, like playing with people I didn't know. I thought that would be another good connection, just like metaphysically. And so I thought, well, one record that was like a huge blowout for me and like my concept of music was Watt's album Contemplating the Engine Room. And that's, I think that came out in 99 or something. I was in college, I remember. And that's Watt's music with Stephen Hodges on drums, and our friend Nels Klein plays guitar. And I remember when I had that record, I didn't buy the record, you know, but somebody taped it, I think, and gave it to me. You know,
I remember those days.
Yeah, poor college kids.
Yeah.
And I remember like at this time already, I'd been thinking about this idea, like we talked about earlier, you know, like, I love jazz, I love rock, I love classical music, I love folk music. But how do I make it just my music, just one thing? Yeah. Where people ask me, what kind of music do you play? Like, I'm tired of answering that because it doesn't make any sense. So, how do I make my music reflect that? You know, how can I do that without feeling like, okay, here's the country track, here's the rock track, here's the jazz track, here's the classical track on the same record? It doesn't make any sense, you know?
Right.
How do you put it together and still have a cohesive, singular identity? It was like driving me nuts, you know, because it didn't seem like it shouldn't be impossible. And when I heard that record, Watt's Contemplating the Engine Room record, I remember listening to the whole thing nonstop in awe. And at the end, just going like, well, God damn it, somebody did it. They did it. They did it. You know, and it made me feel like, okay, so I'm on the right track because I had this idea.
Right.
And now I've witnessed an example, like a very high level example of this in action.
Right.
You know, they like the things they do on that record, they draw from all kinds of music, but it never sounds like a different band from track to track. It sounds like the same band with the same identity from front to back, incorporating all these elements in like the most natural way, and in a way where like the songs are like so emotionally like outpouring, you know, like the whole like just content of the words from Watt in that record is so like heartfelt and heart on your sleeves kind of thing. It was just like this perfect mix of stuff for me in that moment. And it just like blew me away. Like, okay. And then I felt like it was, you know, I don't run at all, but they say nobody could run a 4-minute mile until somebody ran a 4-minute mile. And then what happened? Everybody could do it. Right. Yeah. It's just this like collective consciousness thing got opened up. And so that's what I feel like that record did for me.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
I've told all three of those guys that a number of times, you know, because it's so important to me. So in my mind, I was like, well, maybe I'll ask Hodges.
That's awesome.
Why stop now? So Watt gave me his number, and I called him up, and he was open to the idea. And I was living, my wife and I were living in Knoxville, Tennessee at the time. And Hodges was still in Mavis Staples' band, and they were playing a festival in Chattanooga, about 90 minutes away from Knoxville.
Oh, cool.
A few weeks after I'd called him. So he was like, well, why don't you come down? I think he just wanted to hang out and make sure I wasn't like an axe murderer or something,
Right.
So I went down there, and I picked him up at the hotel. We went to get some coffee. I remember I think we got like coffee and bagels or something, but it was like raining, so we were getting poured on and stuff. But we had a good time hanging out and getting to know each other. So, but anyway, so he was down to do. He was like, yeah, I'll try doing a tour. It'll be fun to reconnect with Watt, and we seem to get along. So I was like, all right, great.
Awesome.
So I booked a 10-day tour, coast to coast, U.S. tour for Wildflowers. And it was great. It was a blast. It was so fun. Those guys just killed it. And we did a lot of the music from Wildflowers, and then we did a number of other things that you can find on a CD from Striped Light Records, which is called Live Flowers,
right,
by MSSV. That is mostly that's mostly the Philadelphia show. But there's one track we did a Stooges tune for the encore every night, and the encore is on the record is the one from Northampton, Mass, with Jay Mascis sitting in and joining us. So that was really fun.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, that was another like brain melter moment for me.
No kidding, man.
Yeah, so that's all on the Live Flowers CD. But so you can, what's interesting, if somebody wanted to be interested in this, you could go get the Wildflowers record and listen to that. And then you could listen to the Live Flowers CD and listen to that. And I think you hear like a really stark difference in the bands. The only difference is one person, though.
Yeah, it's true.
And so it just shows the difference that every personality in the band can have over the collective outcome of the music. Like you could change one person and you get a completely different vibe if the people in the band are listening to each other and reacting and playing in different ways. If you just go on autopilot, no matter who's in the band, yeah, but I think it's going to feel flat anyways. Doesn't matter who's in the band. But if you get people that are listening and reacting and communicating with music, it can have that effect. And it's a really interesting difference to me. So halfway through that tour, I think we were driving somewhere, and I think Watt was like, so what are we going to call the band? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, we're a band now. Cool, yeah. Okay. So he one of his donations to the band name fund was Main Steam Stop Valve, which is actually funny. I don't mean to get too long-winded about it, but it has a connection, again, to the Contemplating the Engine Room record, because there's a book called The Sand Pebbles by Richard McKenna.
Yeah.
And there's a movie.
Yep, I remember the movie.
With Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
And one of the characters in there talks about the main steam stop valve is basically the crux of the engine that runs the ship that they're on. And that story had a lot to do with the Contemplating the Engine Room record. And that record had a lot to do with me wanting to play with Hodge and Watt together.
Wow.
So you tie it up with a little bow there.
Well, I think you mentioned something that's really important, and I've done some improvisational comedy, and I think
cool.
I think the concept that you learn in that works for that as well as music, and it's the concept of yes and. So if in improvisational comedy, you don't deny your comedic partners, whoever's in on stage with you, whatever they say, you agree to it and you expand on it.
Okay.
And so
interesting.
If you deny them, then everything just stops. You're butting heads and it doesn't flow. Nothing happens. It just falls. And I think that works with improvisational music as well, because like you said, the one person is making a difference in that band. This is some of the same songs, but the sound is completely different because you're taking what that person is putting into it and expanding upon that. And I think
that makes a lot of sense to me. Yep.
I think it works well in both senses of improvisation, and that's just fascinating to me. I love improvisational anything, really.
Well, that's interesting for me to hear too, because like I think it does make a lot of sense what you're saying, and as someone that's like kind of riddled with like neuroses in the moment in the actual act of, not to plug the name of the show, but in the actual act of performance,
right.
Having like performance anxiety. No, but just kind of that feeling, there's always, and I think this is true with a lot of people to some extent, and people get over it at different points in their life. But like, if you're playing or you're improvising, whatever, I think it's a pretty honest thing to be sitting there going, is this working? Or is this total trash?
Yep.
And I think you can make a choice at that point. You can dig in and double down and push the confidence through so it will work, or it is already obviously working. But if you're playing with people and you don't allow the and, like you're talking about, then it can also kick into this other thing where you're like, the other person can sense like, oh yeah, they're not into this. So I'm gonna back off, and then everything gets timid and like,
tight.
And shit. Yeah. Nothing good's gonna come out of that.
Right. Yeah. Everybody starts to tighten up.
Yep.
In comedy, if you're not relaxed and loose, maybe your mind isn't working as freely to expand the scene you're in. And in music, if you're tightened up, the music is going to sound tight and not improvisational. You're just going to go back to your fallback, whatever your fallback happens to be.
100%. Yep. And it ties into that thing again, just trusting the people you're working with. Like, if you wanted to work with these people for a reason, so why not trust them 110%?
Exactly.
If you're insecure, just turn to them and figure it out with working together and trusting that something good is going to come out of it because you're there together. Yeah, totally. I mean, we're talking about every good relationship, regardless of what.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be music or comedy. Mm-hmm. So the new album, Everywhen We Go, is back to Watt and Keltner. So was it difficult to get them in the same place again? I mean, I imagine the three of you guys, your schedules have to be crazy.
Well, yeah, coming out of the MSSV talk, it's also really important for me to note that this is, like we said, MSSV is like its own band. We have our own records. We do our own tours. What happened on that first tour, I felt really bad about because there was a lot of people kind of, I think, asking Hodges what it was like to sub for Keltner. And I think at a certain point, I just felt like, all right, I got to step up. And I just like started correcting people. Like, he's not subbing for anybody. You're talking to goddamn Stephen Hodges. He doesn't have to sub for anybody.
Exactly.
He's equally legendary.
Yeah.
So it's a really important distinction, so this is not like, oh yeah, now we're back to this. No, MSSV still has a bunch of stuff going on and new records coming out and all that.
Oh, awesome.
But so the reason this happened, Everywhen We Go, the reason this happened was because I had all that improvised material from the first session, from the Wall of Flowers session. And I think just the first two chunks are what I took for I Am Not a Data Point and Dirty Smell of Dying. And then there's like another like 2 hours of improv. Wow. I didn't have to like fish that far. Like those two snippets were like, oh, these are great. I can work with this. I can work with that. Great.
Okay.
And then I had enough for the record for time wise to make a record. And then I had all this stuff left. So in my mind, I was like, okay, well, this idea of like chopping up the improv and recomposing, this is working. This is great. And I've definitely got enough that we could do another record from it. So I spent a bunch of time kind of chopping it up and, transcribing things and recomposing and or overdubbing and re-recording. And there's a whole record of that stuff. And so again, something really interesting happened. I think Chris sent it to Jim just to kind of get approval from everybody. And keep in mind it's mixed and mastered and everything. Right?
Okay.
And, I think Jim had a really brilliant idea. He wrote back and he was like, well, I'm getting this secondhand. I don't actually know exactly what he said, but verbatim, but to paraphrase, it was something like, this is really interesting and it sounds great, but, this is from like, at this point, this is from 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so maybe we should just, if you really want to do this, maybe we should just do another day.
That's awesome.
And it was like a pretty, it's just sort of an innocent, obvious, maybe like a helpful kind of thing to say. But I was like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe we could. I didn't even cross my mind. You know, I was like, well, I've already got this stuff, so I don't need to bug those guys. I can just compose around this, you know. But it was really encouraging, I think, to hear that he was down to just try some more. I think it maybe just because he could see I was into it and working on it or something. So,
well, it sounds like he was into it too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, really, really. Again, dude's so generous, you know.
Yeah.
Really a sweet guy. And so I said, well, okay, let's figure it out. So this is kind of like during COVID at this point, which, I mean, like forever now is during COVID. Right?
Yeah.
BC is now before COVID.
Right.
And we have AC. So this is like mid AC.
COVID like is now everywhen.
Yeah. So it's like, I think summer 2021, it's like in that zone where it's starting to chill out. And I think like maybe everybody got their first shots. And so everybody was like, all right, it's ending. You know? So we scheduled something like pre-Thanksgiving. So I was going to go back out to LA for some other stuff. I had some other gigs, and then we found a date where we could all meet up in Long Beach again at Big Ego. And it was cool. It was the same kind of vibe. We were hanging out. We had a good time. I think the advantage is I could write knowing a little bit better about maybe how these guys like to work, maybe. Yeah. So I kind of brought a couple of things that I thought would be really fun to do, and that would just kind of allow them to just dive right in and make the magic happen. And then we did improvise some more, and I did go back and chop some of those up. And then Watt wrote a piece of his own for this time, which is different than Wall of Flowers. He wrote the song Yank It Out. That's Watt's composition, like completely. And I think he, again, I don't remember verbatim, but I think he was telling me, I know he was listening to that brand new live Love Supreme John Coltrane quartet that had just come out. I think it was live in Seattle or something.
Okay, yeah.
I know he was listening to that like a ton, like hundreds of times. So I think he was saying that that piece is Yank It Out is maybe kind of like his take on some of the stuff he was getting from that record.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. That solo part we were talking about before, I think that's a real like Elvin Jones, Coltrane moment in the song between me and Jim. And
that's one of my favorite tracks on the album. I also I love Fake Break.
Oh, great. Wow, cool.
That to me, that's got this George Harrison vibe to it. The slide on it, that's got his sound a little bit on it, and it's just reminiscent of that. And it's something that's almost familiar to it, you know.
Thank you. That's very nice to hear, because I don't really play a lot of slide. I'm not like a slide player. I have slides and I enjoy hearing it, and I mess around with it and I do okay. I can watch that intonation, but you know, like I was going to put the slide on that track, and I was like, yeah, I mean, to me, slide guitar is George Harrison. That's like the way he's so melodic with it, the sound. Yeah, of course, there's like tons of great other slide players and stuff throughout the history of the instrument. But for me, the way George Harrison plays slide is like, that's the top, you know, and always kind of in my ear when I'm thinking about it. And so I had been working on it, and I didn't kind of want to put it on there for that part, but there was a little moment of like, what are you, nuts? You're going to play slide with Jim Keltner, who's on like all your favorite George Harrison, right? But you can't think like that. Right. You can't think about it that way. You just have to, it doesn't matter. He's done a lot of other stuff too. We're all just people making music together, and so that's what it called for. So I did my best, and I think it was fun for me, at least, you know. Well,
it's great because Harrison's slide guitar is so clean and precise. Yeah. It's not. You hear some people, and it sounds a little sloppy, maybe, and I'll be the first one. I love sloppy slide guitar. It sounds raw and.
Well, that you can get a lot of that from me. I could use sloppy slide guitar all day long.
But it does that not on that track, because that sounds nice and clean and very precise, and that's one of the.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
That's one of the things that made me think of George Harrison in the style. But I also love This Is Not a Euphemism. I like it. It's got the angularness of jazz, but it's soft. It sounds like maybe it's like softened up a little. I don't exactly know how to describe what I'm hearing because I'm not a jazz expert, but
you don't have to be. That's like one thing I always say. Like people say that stuff, and that is like should be the furthest thing from your mind. You're a human that loves listening to music. So whatever you say is as valid as anything else.
Well, I love it. And, well, this may sound a little weird because sometimes some of the angular stuff from some other players I've heard sounds like somebody, like the guitar fell down the stairs, but not this. It's very, you get the jazz sound. I don't know. I can't even really describe it. Just the way a jazz solo is different from a rock solo. You know, it's not as angular and sharp and not abrasive, but it's I guess angular is the only way to describe it. You've kind of softened it up a bit and made it a lot nicer to my ears.
Well, thank you. Yeah, something I try to do, and this actually is kind of a conscious decision that I think people pick up on a little bit in my playing is that it sounds like it's about to completely fall apart.
I know what you're saying.
Stay with me. But because you get the excitement and sort of the anxiety of like, what is about to, here it comes back, like he saved it or something. Yeah. I like that idea, that sort of like playing in that kind of like, pan-rhythmic, non-denominational kind of way. Like, there's always time, but I don't want to have to adhere strictly to the time. If I want it to sound like it's falling down the stairs, cool. But the cat lands on its feet at the bottom.
True.
So that's kind of my ethos,
I've enjoyed that with your music because it's at times you like, how is he going to pull this out? It's on a record, so he's going to pull it out. You're not going to let it completely fall apart and then record it and release it.
See, but maybe next time I will. That's what keeps people on their toes.
There you go. Man.
Next record is going to be just the worst.
It's going to be
everything.
It's going to be Mike Baggetta, balloon music falls apart. So I love this album. I think it's not, I don't want to say it's not a typical jazz album. And I guess maybe the effects that you're using or something, I don't know. There's definitely a little rock edge to it, and which is what draws me into it. And the amazing players on it just keeps me in it. It's a jazz-based album that I'm going to listen to over and over again.
Well, thank you. I have a term I like to use called post-genre.
Oh,
where we're in 2022, going into 2023, and as I've been saying all along, what kind of music do you play? Doesn't matter to me. I don't even want to think about it. Like there's all sorts of other baggage that goes along with genre definitions. Mm-hmm. You have the weight of history of like sociological everything.
Yeah.
You say a genre and a person gets a picture in their mind. It's like insane, So because I'm trying to think about how to have jazz, rock, classical, punk, whatever, like all these things filtered through my lens, of what it is that speaks to me from those things and put it together. You don't hear a lot of like swing time on the record, so some people, they think jazz, they're going to think ding, 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 ding. There really isn't too much of that.
Right.
There are straight beats. There is kind of this like noir Spanish kind of thing, a little bit here and there. There's some acoustic music. There's electronic effects. There's loops and samples. And so it's a funny thing, because I think some people that are like real sort of like hardcore capital J jazz fans, they would like chastise us for thinking about it with that word, but then you have guys who only listen to like hardcore and they wouldn't consider this rock at all and stuff. Right. So it's a funny thing, man. It's a really interesting kind of like little social experiment I run with the records, to see like what people think and what they don't think, and it's this and it's not that and it's this and that, and I just don't worry about any of it.
I think you stumbled across a great formula for an album. Just take whatever, maybe the entire goal is just to alienate the hardcore of every genre.
Well, that's an interesting idea. But then if you get rid of the hardcore people, what are you left with?
I think everybody else. Just normal people who like a wide variety of stuff.
No conviction.
Yeah.
I forget. I think it's a real quote. and I forget who it's about, and I forget who said it.
This is good.
But I think the quote is something like, if you're not upsetting half your audience, then you're not doing your job right.
Interesting.
I think I read that somewhere about Godard, who passed away yesterday.
I should try to piss off more people on this podcast then.
Yeah, well, half of them.
Yeah. I gotta figure out how to do that.
No more than half.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you about this other project that you're doing that I saw on your website, the limited direct-to-vinyl improv singles with Ava Mendoza.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds amazing. Is that still in the works? You still doing that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's, well, yeah. So I guess maybe it'll have been made already when this airs, but we're recording them on October 10th. Wow. Ava is, she's definitely one of my favorite musicians. I mean, not just a guitarist, but just like a conceptualist. I think what she does is awesome. And I'd been aware of her for a while. I don't think we were in New York together for a long period of the same amount of time, but I don't think we really met until the last show of the Wall of Flowers tour. We played in Manhattan at the club that used to be Brownies, but it had changed names, and it was called Coney Island Baby when we played there. Oh wow! But now it's like a different, somebody else owns it and it's a different name, but it was always Brownies.
Man, I used to go to Brownies a bunch.
Yeah, East Village. Yeah. So the people who put that show on was Le Poisson Rouge, this music venue production company, sort of great sort of tastemakers, estheticians, and they have a great performance space. They're really, really cool guys. But so they put the show on, and they asked who I wanted as the opener. And I think Ava reached out to me, or because I book all this stuff myself. So I think Ava reached out to me, or Watt mentioned her as something. I forget exactly, but I was like, oh yeah, what a great idea. So she did a solo set. She opened for us, and then she joined us on the encore. Oh, cool. Just like Jay Maskis did in Northampton. She joined us in New York. So we'd have guests on the encore and stuff. And it was really fun playing with her. I think there's a YouTube video up of that, of me and her playing together on the encore of that last MSSV show. You can find it. Just like raging guitar, like noise shred, like, and I remember like at one point we looked at each other like smiling, like this is great.
So you just won me over with that.
It was really fun. Yeah, it was really fun, and we got along good. And then over lockdown, we were doing different. MSSV did some 7-inch vinyl projects and distance tracking and stuff. And I think at one point Ava reached out and was like, do you want to do a split 7, like one of her bands on one side and MSSV on the other side? And I think what happened was I was in the middle of like these last two 7-inches we were doing. And I kind of like didn't have the bandwidth, and I was like, can I get back to you? And then I think maybe I spaced and didn't write back to her. Or something, or maybe I did, and I don't remember, but it didn't end up happening is the point. And so then when MSSV did the big our Haru tour, the Spring US tour this past spring, March and April of 22, we did 48 shows from coast to coast around the US.
Jeez.
48 shows in 48 days.
That's amazing. God.
It was really fun. At one point, there was this sort of little boutique record label called Least of All that asked if we wanted to do a session for them while we were in New York. And I was like, well, we don't have any time, unfortunately, because, we got to go to the next gig.
Yeah.
But I filed that away. It sounded like what they do is an interesting thing. But although it sounds like what they usually do is you get an artist to go in and they do a song. But let's say 10 people buy the record that they're going to record, like the live version or whatever. Mm-hmm. They've got to do that same song 10 different times for each of the people. Wow. So in my mind, I was like, you got to do the same song 10 times? and they like lathe cut a little 7-inch in the moment. It's like super
amazing.
It's kind of a cool thing, but it seems like it seems like you could do a little more with this. So in my mind, I was like, well, what if you just did a different improvisation every time? That would be more fun,
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I should ask Ava, because I spaced on that other thing. This would be a perfect opportunity. She lives in New York. They're in New York. I've got some other shows in New York. So she was into it, and which is cool. So we booked ourselves a couple little live shows beforehand. We will have done a masterclass together.
Oh, awesome.
And I think we've sold 30 of these.
Wow.
Because you can't sell more than you can do in a day at this session. So you can't do like 100, because you got to do it 100 times, right? So I convinced the little label to say, like, well, you know what we're going to do? Instead of doing one song 30 times, let's do 30 different improvisations. So everybody who wants to buy one, they buy one. Somebody buys improvisation number 1, they get that one. They're the only one who gets it.
That's amazing.
Improvisation number 2, they buy that. It's different. They're the only one who gets it. So we're going to do 30 improvisations that are cut onto these 30 individual discs. And they sold out in like a day. So it went real quick.
I'm so angry. I just found out about this.
Well, hopefully it'll serve as a launch pad to something further from us. So yeah, it'll be really fun. I'm excited though. I think we're looking forward to it.
That's amazing. I mean, having a unique single, the one of one, that's incredible to me.
I mean, there's a little kitsch thing, but I like that stuff.
I do too.
Like super ultra limited edition. No one else has this. I'm kind of into that, so it's all right.
I love that. I love that kind of stuff. So, where can everybody find the album when it comes out? How can they follow you and get more information on other limited edition things you're doing, and maybe some not so limited edition things?
Yeah, if you just you look for Mike Baggetta on Instagram. That's kind of where I do most of my stuff. I have a Facebook page, but most importantly, I have a website, mikebaggetta.com. Watch the spelling. It's 2 G's and 2 T. There's an email list. I don't really send out a lot of emails, maybe a couple times a year, like where something is approaching, I'll send out an email. And then the onus is on you to mark your calendar down. Yeah. And then, so you can find all that stuff. And then for the record, you can find links through the website, but the Everywhen We Go record on Big Ego Records, you can find that mainly through our Bandcamp sites, mikebaggetta.bandcamp.com, or Big Ego Records also has a Bandcamp site. Big Ego Records also has a website, which I should know the name of, but it's probably something like bigegorecords.com.
That makes sense.
Do a little Google, you can figure it out. But you'll be able to purchase it through there. But they also do a record club where you can subscribe for a year, and you get all the records that they put out for the year. So this year is kind of ending, but you'll still get all the ones that came out this year. And I think there's Everywhen We Go is the last one. There's 2 Psychic Temple reissues also in that. I always thought that was cool to just sign up for a subscription from a label and just see what you get, so you can do that.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, way into it.
Oh, it's awesome. Well,
that's good work.
I want to thank you for spending so much time with me. I've kept you for quite a while tonight. It's been a blast.
Time flies, man. It was a blast. It was real fun.